My cousin Madison thought she was so clever when she posted that photo of me online with the caption, "When you shop at Goodwill, but pretend it's designer." What she didn't know was that 3 months later, I'd be wearing a custom Valentino gown on the cover of Vogue, and her smug smile would turn into pure shock. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Growing up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, meant that family gatherings were unavoidable. Every holiday, birthday, or random Sunday, the entire Patterson clan would descend upon my grandmother's sprawling farmhouse like locusts. And without fail, Madison would be there, looking like she'd stepped straight out of a catalog with her perfectly coordinated outfits and that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Madison was my father's brother's daughter, exactly 6 months older than me, which she never let me forget. Uncle Trevor had struck it big in real estate development, and Madison's mother, Aunt Stephanie, came from old money in Des Moines. Their house was one of those modern monstrosities with more bathrooms than a small hotel and a 3-car garage that housed Madison's BMW, her mother's Mercedes, and her father's Tesla. My family lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment above my mom's bakery on Main Street. Mom worked 16-hour days crafting wedding cakes and pastries that were legendary throughout the county, while Dad taught high school English and coached the debate team for extra income. We weren't poor, but we definitely weren't Madison's kind of rich. The worst part wasn't the money difference, it was how Madison made sure everyone knew about it. She had this way of delivering backhanded compliments that stung for days. "Oh, Sadie, I love how you make thrift store finds look almost expensive," she'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear. Or my personal favorite, "It's so inspiring how creative you get when you can't afford the real thing." The dress incident happened at my cousin Tyler's engagement party in March. Tyler was Madison's older brother and the golden child of the Patterson family. He'd just gotten engaged to his college sweetheart, and Aunt Stephanie was throwing an elaborate celebration at the country club, the kind of place where they charged $20 for a salad and the waiters wore white gloves. I'd been saving for months to buy something appropriate for the party. After scouring every store in Cedar Falls and finding nothing under $300 that would work for such a fancy venue, I finally found it at Second Chances, the high-end consignment shop downtown. It was a midnight blue cocktail dress with delicate beading along the neckline, originally from Nordstrom, with the tag still attached. The owner, Mrs. Chen, told me it had been donated by a woman who'd bought it for her daughter's wedding but never worn it. For $68, it was mine. I spent an entire afternoon altering it to fit perfectly, taking in the waist and shortening the hem. When I paired it with my grandmother's vintage pearl earrings and the black heels I'd bought for prom, I felt confident and elegant. For once, I thought I might actually fit in at one of these Patterson family events. The country club was everything I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, fresh orchids on every table, and waiters circulating with champagne and tiny appetizers that probably cost more than my entire outfit. I arrived with my parents, who immediately headed to the bar where the other adults were gathering. I grabbed sparkling water and tried to blend into the background, which was my usual strategy at these things. Tyler found me first, giving me a genuine hug and complimenting my dress. His fiancée Emma was sweet too, asking where I'd gotten it because she loved the color. For a moment, I let myself relax and enjoy the party. That's when Madison appeared, resplendent in what I later learned was a $600 Kate Spade dress in coral pink that complemented her professionally highlighted blonde hair perfectly. She air-kissed my cheek and stepped back to give me the once-over with those calculating green eyes. "Sadie, you look so resourceful," she said, that familiar edge creeping into her voice. "I swear I saw this exact dress at Nordstrom last season. Did you find it at one of your little thrift shops?" My cheeks burned, but I lifted my chin. Second Chances, actually. It's consignment. Madison's laugh was light and musical, designed to draw attention without seeming mean-spirited to casual observers. "Oh, honey, that's the same thing. Well, good for you for making it work. I always admire people who can pull off previously owned fashion." Before I could respond, she'd pulled out her phone and positioned herself next to me. Let's get a picture of us together. Tyler will love having all his cousins in one shot. She wrapped her arm around my shoulders and held the phone up high, angling it so the light hit her face perfectly while mine fell into shadow. Perfect, she chirped, already typing on her phone. I'm posting this right now. You look so cute in your little vintage find. I watched in horror as she tagged me in the photo on Instagram, along with several of our mutual cousins and family friends. The caption read, "Family party vibes with my sweet cousin. Love how she makes thrift store chic work for her. Hashtag family time. Hashtag make it misty. Hashtag consignment queen." The comments started rolling in immediately. Madison's friends from her private college, girls I'd grown up hearing about but never meeting, began liking and commenting. "Oh my God, Maddie, you look stunning in that color. Your dress is literally perfect. Where is it from? Love the family bonding." And then, buried in the middle, was the comment that made my stomach drop. "Wait, is that actually a thrift store dress? I'm dying." Madison had liked the comment. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall, trying not to cry and ruin the makeup I'd so carefully applied. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications as more people liked and commented on the photo. Most of the comments weren't even about me specifically, but I could read between the lines. Everyone could see the difference between Madison's expensive dress and my consignment find, no matter how well it fit or how carefully I'd styled it. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, the party was in full swing. I tried to avoid Madison for the rest of the evening, sticking close to my parents and making small talk with Tyler and Emma, but I could feel her eyes on me, and I caught her showing the photo to her friends, all of them glancing in my direction with barely concealed amusement. The drive home was quiet. My parents seemed tired, and I stared out the window at the Iowa farmland rolling past in the darkness. Mom reached back and squeezed my hand. "You looked beautiful tonight, honey," she said softly. "That dress was perfect on you." Dad adjusted his rearview mirror to meet my eyes. "Madison's just insecure, Sadie. She has to put other people down to feel good about herself." I nodded and smiled, but inside, I was making a promise to myself. I was tired of being Madison's poor cousin, the one she could use to make herself look generous and sophisticated by comparison. I was tired of shopping in the clearance sections and altering clothes to make them fit properly. I was tired of feeling like I didn't belong in my own family. That night, I sat in my bedroom above the bakery, the smell of tomorrow's bread already filling the air as Mom worked downstairs. I stared at Madison's Instagram post, which now had over 100 likes and dozens of comments. She'd tagged the location as Patterson Country Club and included hashtags like blessed and family first. I screenshotted the photo and saved it to my phone. Someday, I told myself, someday she's going to regret this. I just had no idea how soon that day would come, or how dramatically my life was about to change. The Monday after Tyler's engagement party, I walked into Cedar Falls High with my head held high, determined not to let Madison's Instagram post affect my day. But by third period, it was clear that half the school had seen it. Whispers followed me down the hallways, and I caught girls from my class showing each other their phones and glancing in my direction. It was Jessica Murphy who finally said something directly. She cornered me by my locker after lunch, her perfectly straightened hair falling over one shoulder as she leaned against the metal door next to mine. "So, I saw Madison's post from the country club," she said, examining her manicured nails with fake casualness. "That dress was actually really pretty on you. Where did you say it was from again?" "Second chances," I replied, shoving my chemistry textbook into my bag harder than necessary. "Right, the consignment place." Jessica's smile was sharp. "Well, you definitely made it work. I mean, nobody would even know it was used unless someone pointed it out." The hallway suddenly felt too small, too crowded. I slammed my locker shut and pushed past Jessica without another word, ignoring her surprised, "Sadie, wait," behind me. That afternoon, I found myself in the one place that always made sense, the dark room in the basement of the school's art building. Photography had been my escape since sophomore year, when Mr. Rodriguez had shown me how to develop black and white film. There was something magical about watching an image slowly appear in the developer solution, the way light and shadow came together to tell a story. I was alone in the red-lit room, hanging strips of negatives to dry, when the door opened and Caleb Harrison walked in. Caleb was a senior, captain of the debate team my father coached, and probably the only person at Cedar Falls High who genuinely didn't care about social hierarchies or designer labels. "Rough day?" he asked, settling into the chair next to the enlarger. His dark hair was messy in that effortless way that some guys just naturally achieved, and his worn Converse sneakers had seen better days. Is it that obvious? I continued clipping negatives to the line, grateful for something to do with my hands. "Well, you've been hiding in here since fourth period, and you missed debate practice." Caleb picked up one of my contact sheets, studying the images I'd taken around town last weekend. "These are really good, Sadie. This one of the old grain elevators is incredible." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I glanced at the image he was pointing to, a stark black and white shot of the abandoned grain elevator on the edge of town, its concrete tower reaching toward a stormy sky. I'd spent an hour getting the composition just right, waiting for the light to hit the structure in a way that emphasized both its industrial beauty and its decay. "Thanks," I said, surprised by the genuine compliment. "I'm thinking about submitting some pieces to the state photography competition this spring." "You should. You've got a real eye for this stuff." Caleb set the contact sheet down carefully. "Want to talk about what's bothering you?" Before I could stop myself, the whole story came tumbling out. Madison's post, the comments, Jessica's fake sympathy, the constant feeling of not measuring up to my cousin's standards. Caleb listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. "Madison sounds like a piece of work," he said when I finally finished. "But you know what? She's probably threatened by you." I snorted. "Right, she's threatened by her poor cousin who shops at thrift stores." "I'm serious." Caleb leaned forward, his brown eyes intense. "Think about it. She has to constantly put you down to make herself feel superior. That's not confidence, that's insecurity. Meanwhile, you're over here creating actual art, helping your parents run their business, getting straight A's, and you don't need to tear other people down to feel good about yourself." His words hit something deep inside me, a spark of defiance I'd been trying to ignore. I just wish I could show her that I'm more than just the poor cousin she can use for Instagram content. So, show her. How? I can't exactly afford to suddenly start shopping at Nordstrom. Caleb was quiet for a moment, thinking, what if it's not about the clothes? What if it's about something bigger? That evening, I was helping Mom close the bakery when she found me staring at my reflection in the front window. The day's bread had sold out, and we were wiping down counters and preparing for tomorrow's early morning baking session. "You've been quiet tonight," she observed, hanging up her apron. "Everything okay?" I turned away from the window and grabbed the spray bottle of cleaner. "Mom, do you ever wish things were different? Like, wish we had more money or lived somewhere else?" She paused in her cleaning and looked at me with concern. "Honey, where is this coming from?" Madison's Instagram post, the party. I just felt so out of place there. Mom set down her cleaning cloth and pulled me into a hug that smelled like vanilla and yeast. "Sadie, listen to me. Your worth isn't determined by how much money you spend on clothes or where you shop. You are smart, talented, and kind. Madison might have fancier things, but she doesn't have what you have." What do I have? Heart, creativity, the ability to see beauty in things other people overlook. Do you know how many people come into this bakery just to see your photographs on the walls? Mrs. Henderson bought 3 prints last month for her living room. I'd forgotten about that. I'd started displaying some of my photography in the bakery a few months ago, and people had responded better than I'd expected. Several customers had asked about prints, and a few had even commissioned custom pieces. "Maybe," Mom continued, "instead of trying to compete with Madison on her level, you should focus on your own strengths. Show her what you can do that she can't." That night, I lay in bed scrolling through photography websites and Instagram accounts of professional photographers. I studied their portfolios, their lighting techniques, their composition choices. I bookmarked articles about breaking into fashion photography, about building a portfolio, about networking in the industry. By the time I fell asleep at 2 a.m., I had a plan forming in my mind. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. I threw myself into photography with a passion that surprised even me. I started carrying my camera everywhere, documenting life in Cedar Falls with fresh eyes. The abandoned factory on Oak Street became a series of industrial decay. The farmer's market turned into a study of hands and textures. Even the high school hallways provided opportunities to capture authentic moments between classes. I created an Instagram account specifically for my photography, at @SadiePatterson_photo, and started posting daily. My style was moody and dramatic, influenced by photographers like Annie Leibovitz and Stephen Klein. I focused on black and white portraits, architectural details, and lifestyle shots that told small-town Iowa life. Caleb became my unofficial assistant and biggest supporter. He'd drive me to locations around the county in his beat-up Honda Civic, carrying equipment and offering feedback on compositions. Sometimes he'd model for me, his natural ease in front of the camera helping me practice portrait techniques. "You're getting really good at this," he said one afternoon as we reviewed the shots I'd taken at the old railroad bridge outside town. "Have you thought about reaching out to any local businesses? The new boutique downtown might want some product shots." The boutique he mentioned was Magnolia & Co., a trendy shop that had opened 6 months ago in the renovated historic district. The owner was a woman named Rachel Kim, who'd moved to Cedar Falls from Chicago with her husband when he got a job at the university. She'd brought big city style to our small town, and her shop featured clothes from emerging designers and sustainable brands. Walking into Magnolia & Co. with my portfolio was one of the scariest things I'd done since the country club party. Rachel was arranging a display of spring dresses when I approached, my hands trembling slightly as I introduced myself. "I'm Sadie Patterson," I began. "I'm a local photographer, and I was wondering if you might be interested in some product photography for your social media or website." Rachel looked up from the dress she was steaming, her dark eyes curious. "A local photographer? I didn't know Cedar Falls had any." "Well, I'm still in high school," I admitted, "but I've been working really hard to build my portfolio. I'd love to show you some of my work." She gestured toward the seating area in the back of the store. "I've got a few minutes. Let's take a look." My heart pounded as Rachel flipped through the printed portfolio I'd assembled. I'd included my best architectural shots, some portraits of local business owners, and a few lifestyle images that showed my ability to capture clothing and accessories in natural settings. "These are actually quite impressive," she said after several minutes of silence. "Your eye for composition is sophisticated, and I love the mood you create. Very editorial." Editorial. The word sent a thrill through me. That was exactly the style I'd been trying to achieve. "Tell me," Rachel continued, "would you be interested in shooting some lookbook images for my summer collection? I can't pay much, maybe $200 for a half-day shoot, but Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, and soft, diffused light that every photographer dreams of. I met Rachel at Magnolia & Co. at 8 a.m., my camera equipment carefully packed in the new bag I'd bought with money saved from working at the bakery. My hands were steady, but my heart was racing with anticipation. The model Rachel had hired was a college student named Zoe Chen, a journalism major at the University of Northern Iowa, who did freelance modeling on weekends. She was naturally beautiful, with striking features and an easy confidence that made her perfect for the editorial style I was developing. When she arrived wearing minimal makeup and her hair in a casual bun, I knew we were going to create something special. "I love what you've done with the lighting setups I've seen on your Instagram," Zoe said, as we walked to our first location at the courthouse steps. "Very moody and cinematic. It reminds me of campaigns I've seen in bigger cities." The shoot exceeded all my expectations. For 3 hours, we moved through different locations around downtown Cedar Falls: the historic courthouse, the old brick alleyways behind Main Street, the Riverside Park with its massive oak trees. I found myself completely in my element, directing Zoe's poses, adjusting lighting with reflectors, and capturing images that felt both timeless and contemporary. Through my viewfinder, Cedar Falls looked like a sophisticated backdrop worthy of any fashion magazine. The key was seeing our small town through fresh eyes, finding beauty in details others might overlook. That's a wrap, I announced, after capturing the final shot of Zoe in a stunning emerald green dress against the weathered brick of the old mill building. Rachel had been watching the entire shoot, occasionally offering input, but mostly staying back to let me work. As we packed up equipment, her smile was genuine and impressive. Sadie, I have to say, you exceeded my expectations. The way you worked with the natural light, your direction with Zoe, it felt very professional. I can't wait to see the edited images. That evening, I spent 6 hours editing the photos on my laptop, fine-tuning colors, adjusting shadows, creating the polished, editorial look I'd been striving for. When I finally exported the final images, I stared at them in disbelief. These weren't amateur photos taken by a high school student in Iowa. They looked like they belonged in a fashion magazine. I uploaded a few of the images to my photography Instagram account before bed, adding careful captions about the collaboration with Magnolia & Co. and thanking Rachel and Zoe for the opportunity. Then I fell asleep, exhausted but exhilarated. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was buzzing with notifications. The Instagram post had gained more attention overnight than any of my previous work. Comments were pouring in from accounts I didn't recognize, other photographers, fashion bloggers, even some verified accounts from Chicago and Minneapolis fashion scenes. The composition in that courthouse shot is incredible. Are you available for freelance work? Another said, Iowa has never looked so chic. Love your editorial eye. But the comment that made me do a double take was from an account called @MidwestFashionCollective. Would love to feature these images in our upcoming showcase of emerging Midwest photographers. Please DM us. The Midwest Fashion Collective, I learned after some frantic Googling, was a Chicago-based organization that promoted fashion and art talent from smaller cities across the region. They had connections with major magazines, advertising agencies, and fashion brands. Being featured by them could open doors I'd never even imagined existed. I spent my lunch break crafting the perfect direct message, trying to sound professional while barely containing my excitement. By the end of the school day, they'd responded with an invitation to submit a full portfolio for consideration in their summer showcase. This is huge, Sadie, Caleb said when I showed him the exchange on my phone. We were in the darkroom again, but this time I was bouncing with energy instead of hiding from the world. A Chicago showcase could get your work in front of serious industry people. I know, but I need more fashion work to build a complete portfolio. The Magnolia shoot was just one collaboration. So create more opportunities. What about other local businesses? The hair salon on First Street? Maybe that new jewelry designer who sells at the farmer's market? Over the next month, I threw myself into building relationships with every fashion-adjacent business in Cedar Falls and the surrounding area. The hair salon loved my portraits of their stylists at work. The jewelry designer hired me to photograph her entire spring collection. I even convinced the owner of the vintage clothing store to let me style and shoot a lookbook featuring pieces from the 1960s and 70s. Each shoot taught me something new about lighting, composition, and working with different types of subjects. My Instagram following grew from 200 to over 2,000 followers, including fashion industry professionals from major cities. Comments on my posts frequently mentioned my unique perspective and fresh take on Midwest style. But the breakthrough moment came from an unexpected source. I was photographing the spring formal collection at a boutique in nearby Waterloo when the store owner, Linda Martinez, mentioned that her daughter lived in New York and worked as an assistant to a fashion stylist. I've been showing her your work, Linda said as I adjusted my camera settings. She thinks you have real potential. Would you be interested if she shared some of your images with people in the industry? 3 weeks later, I received an email that changed everything. The subject line read, Portfolio Review, Fashion Photography Opportunity. The sender was Amanda Foster, Senior Fashion Editor at Allure magazine. Linda's daughter had shared my work with her boss, who had passed it along to Amanda. The email was brief but direct. Dear Sadie, I've been impressed by your portfolio, particularly your editorial approach to small-town fashion photography. Your work has a sophistication that suggests significant potential. I'll be in Chicago next month for a regional talent scout event. Would you be interested in meeting to discuss potential collaboration opportunities? Please reply with your availability and any additional portfolio pieces you'd like to share. I read the email 5 times before it fully sank in. Amanda Foster from Allure magazine, a publication I'd studied religiously for months, wanted to meet with me? A girl from Cedar Falls, Iowa, who 6 months ago had been humiliated at a country club for wearing a consignment dress? That night, I called Rachel to share the news. Her excitement was infectious. Sadie, this is incredible. Allure is huge. They work with the biggest names in fashion. But honestly, I'm not surprised. Your work has been getting attention from some serious people lately. What do you mean? Check your Instagram. That photo you posted yesterday of the vintage leather jacket shoot, it's been shared by 3 different fashion blogs, and I saw it reposted by a photographer who works with major brands. I opened Instagram and nearly dropped my phone. The image she was talking about, a moody black and white shot of a model in a 1970s leather jacket against the brick wall of Cedar Falls' old fire station, had been shared by accounts I'd only dreamed of being noticed by. The comments were filled with praise from industry professionals, and my follower count had jumped by another 500 people overnight. For the first time since Madison's Instagram post, I allowed myself to imagine a different future. Not just success, but the kind of success that would prove I was more than the poor cousin who shopped at thrift stores. The kind of success that would show everyone, Madison included, that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go. The meeting with Amanda Foster was scheduled for a Saturday in Chicago, just 2 weeks away. I had exactly 14 days to prepare for the most important conversation of my life, and I was determined not to waste a single one of them. As I fell asleep that night, I couldn't help but smile, thinking about how Madison would react when she saw where that resourceful girl in the consignment dress had ended up. $200, more than I'd ever made from photography, and the chance to work with a real fashion retailer. I tried to keep my voice steady as I accepted. Perfect. What can you do next Saturday morning? I'll provide the model and the location. I'm thinking of the park downtown, maybe the old courthouse steps. Very classic American small town. As I walked home that afternoon, my camera bag slung over my shoulder and a legitimate fashion photography gig in my pocket, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: excitement about the future. Madison's Instagram post was still there, still a reminder of that humiliating night at the country club. But for the first time since then, I felt like I was building something that belonged to me, something she couldn't take away or diminish with her backhanded comments. I had no idea that this small-town photo shoot would be the first step towards something much bigger than I'd ever imagined. The train to Chicago felt like a portal between 2 worlds. As the Iowa countryside blurred past my window, I clutched my leather portfolio, a graduation gift from my parents that had cost them more than they could afford, and tried to calm my racing heart. In 2 hours, I'd be sitting across from Amanda Foster, a woman whose byline I'd studied in countless Allure issues. Mom had driven me to the station at dawn, pressing a thermos of coffee and her lucky pearl bracelet into my hands. "You were born for this moment," she'd whispered, but I could see the worry in her eyes. We both knew this meeting could change everything, or leave me more disappointed than ever. The Starbucks where Amanda had suggested we meet was in the heart of Chicago's Magnificent Mile, surrounded by flagship stores I'd only seen in magazines. I arrived 20 minutes early, ordering a green tea I was too nervous to drink, and choosing a table with good lighting in case she wanted to review my prints. Amanda Foster was nothing like I imagined. Instead of the intimidating fashion editor stereotype, she was warm and approachable, with short silver hair, vintage tortoiseshell glasses, and a smile that immediately put me at ease. She ordered her coffee black and sat down with the confident grace of someone who'd spent decades navigating the fashion industry. "So, Sadie from Iowa," she began, pulling out her tablet, Your work has been making quite the impression in our circles. That shot of the grain elevator you posted last month, it ended up in a mood board for a major campaign we're developing. My hands trembled slightly as I opened my portfolio. Really, I had no idea. That's the thing about authentic talent. It speaks for itself. Amanda flipped through my printed images slowly, pausing at certain shots and occasionally making small sounds of approval. Your eye is exceptional, especially considering you're self-taught. This composition here, she pointed to one of my courthouse steps images, shows an understanding of editorial storytelling that some photographers never develop. After 20 minutes of portfolio review, Amanda leaned back in her chair and fixed me with an appraising look. I'm going to be direct with you, Sadie. Allure is launching a new initiative called American Stories, a monthly feature highlighting fashion and beauty in unexpected places across the country. Small towns, rural communities, places the industry typically overlooks. My heart stopped. That sounds incredible. We need a photographer who can capture the authenticity of these locations without making them feel quaint or patronizing. Someone who understands that style exists everywhere, not just in major cities. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. I'd like to offer you a trial assignment. The room seemed to tilt. A trial assignment with Allure? 3 days in rural Montana, documenting local style and fashion. We'd pair you with one of our writers and a fashion stylist. Full expenses covered, plus a fee that I think you'll find more than fair. Amanda pulled out a contract from her bag. If the work meets our standards, it could lead to a regular contributor position. The numbers on the contract made my head spin. $5,000 for 3 days of work, with potential for monthly assignments worth even more. It was more money than my parents made in 2 months at the bakery. There's one catch, Amanda continued. We'd need you to start in 2 weeks. I know that's short notice, especially since you're still in high school. I graduate next month, I said quickly, and I can make it work. Amanda smiled and extended her hand. Welcome to the team, Sadie. Temporarily, let's see what you can do. The train ride home passed in a blur of disbelief and elation. I called my parents, Caleb, Rachel, anyone who had listened to my breathless recap of the meeting. By the time I reached Cedar Falls, the news had spread through our small network of supporters like wildfire. That evening, as I helped Mom prep for Sunday's baking, I couldn't stop talking about Montana, about shooting for Allure, about the possibility of becoming a regular contributor. I'm so proud of you, honey, Mom said, rolling out pie dough with practiced efficiency. But promise me something. Don't forget where you come from. Success can change people. I won't change, Mom. This is just the beginning. But even as I said it, I could feel something shifting inside me. The girl who'd been humiliated by Madison's Instagram post was evolving into someone with real power, real opportunities. Someone who wouldn't have to smile politely through family gatherings while her cousin made cutting remarks about thrift store fashion. Speaking of Madison, I'd barely thought about her since the Amanda Foster meeting. But as I scrolled through social media that night, I found myself on her Instagram page. She'd been posting regularly from her freshman year at Northwestern: sorority rush parties, expensive dinners in Chicago, spring break in Cabo with friends whose parents owned investment firms. Her most recent post was from a charity gala in Des Moines, where she posed in a designer gown that probably cost more than my family's monthly rent. The caption read, "Blessed to support such an important cause with my amazing family. Nothing better than giving back. #blessed, #family, #giving back." For the first time in months, looking at Madison's perfect life didn't sting. Instead, I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that while she was attending charity galas and posting about being blessed, I was building something real, something earned through talent and hard work rather than inherited through family connections. The Montana assignment was everything I'd dreamed of and more challenging than I'd expected. The Allure team, writer Sophie Chen and stylist Marcus Rivera, were seasoned professionals who pushed me to think differently about every shot. We documented ranch hands in vintage Wrangler jeans, small-town salon owners who created red carpet-worthy looks with drugstore products, and teenage girls who mixed thrift store finds with pieces they'd sewn themselves. "You're not just photographing clothes," Marcus explained as we set up a shot in a field of wildflowers. "You're capturing the spirit of American style, the creativity that emerges when people don't have unlimited budgets, but unlimited imagination." The images we created were unlike anything I'd done before. They had the polish and sophistication of high-fashion editorial work, but with an authenticity that could only come from genuine respect for the subjects. When Sophie interviewed the women we photographed, their stories revealed a depth and creativity that challenged every assumption about fashion in rural America. On our final day, while shooting at a local rodeo, I received a text that stopped me cold. It was from my cousin Tyler. "Saw your work is going to be in Allure. Madison's freaking out, LOL. Congrats, cuz. You're amazing." Amanda Foster called me 2 days after I returned to Iowa. "The Montana images are exceptional, Sadie. We'd like to offer you a 6-month contract as a contributing photographer for American Stories. The terms are generous, and it would involve travel to locations across the Midwest and South." 6 months? Contributing photographer? Allure magazine. The words felt surreal even as I wrote them down in my planner. "There's something else," Amanda continued. "We're fast-tracking the Montana story for our August issue, and we'd like to feature you in a sidebar profile about emerging talent in fashion photography. It would include some of your Iowa work and discuss your journey from small-town photographer to magazine contributor." A profile in Allure. My face, my story, my work, in the same magazine Madison probably read religiously. The same publication that sat on coffee tables at the country club where she'd humiliated me just 6 months ago. "I'd be honored," I managed. "Perfect. We'll need a professional headshot and a brief biography by next week. And Sadie, congratulations. You've earned this." That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom above the bakery, surrounded by the smell of tomorrow's bread and the familiar sounds of my parents moving around downstairs. In my hands was a contract that would change everything: my future, my family's financial situation, my entire relationship with the world beyond Cedar Falls. I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to Madison, not to gloat or seek revenge, but to share news that I knew would reach her eventually anyway. The email was simple and professional. "Hi, Madison. I hope freshman year is going well. I wanted to let you know that I've been hired as a contributing photographer for Allure magazine. They'll be featuring some of my work in their August issue, including a profile about my photography journey. I thought you might find it interesting since you've always been so supportive of my creative efforts. Hope to see you at the next family gathering. Love, Sadie." I read it 3 times before hitting send, my finger hovering over the button as I savored the moment. 6 months ago, Madison had posted that humiliating photo with its condescending caption about thrift store chic. Now, I was about to be featured in one of the most prestigious fashion magazines in the world. The response came within an hour. "OMG, Sadie, I had no idea you were doing photography professionally now. That's so cool. Can't wait to see the magazine. So proud of my talented cousin. Love." I stared at the message for a long time, noting the slightly manic enthusiasm of the exclamation points, the way she'd positioned herself as proud and supportive rather than acknowledging her past behavior. It was perfectly Madison, gracious on the surface, but I could read the shock and perhaps even jealousy between the lines. For the first time since that terrible night at the country club, I felt like we were finally playing on equal ground, and the game had only just begun. The August issue of Allure hit newsstands on a sweltering Tuesday morning in July. I was in Nashville, Tennessee for my 3rd assignment with the American Stories series when Amanda Foster called me at 6 a.m. "Sadie, are you sitting down?" Her voice carried an excitement I'd never heard before. "The response to your profile has been unprecedented. Our social media engagement is up 400% since yesterday, and we've had 17 different agencies reach out asking for your contact information." I was standing on the balcony of my hotel room, watching the sunrise over Music City's skyline when the magnitude of her words hit me. 17 agencies? Fashion photographers, commercial work, even some film studios interested in your editorial eye. There's something else. Vogue wants to meet with you next week. Anna Wintour's office called personally. Anna Wintour. Anna Wintour wanted to meet with me, Sadie Patterson from Cedar Falls, Iowa. I had to sit down on the hotel room bed to process this information. The Nashville shoot is going well, I hope, Amanda continued, though I could hear her smile through the phone. Better than well. The local designer we're featuring, Carmen Rodriguez, has this incredible ability to blend traditional Mexican textiles with modern silhouettes. Her story about building a fashion business in the heart of country music territory is exactly what American Stories is about. Perfect. Finish strong there, then get back to Chicago. We have some serious conversations ahead of us. After hanging up, I immediately called my parents. Mom answered on the first ring. She'd been anxiously waiting for news about the magazine release. Honey, Mrs. Henderson just called from the flower shop. She saw the magazine at the grocery store and bought 5 copies. She said you look like a real fashion photographer on the cover sidebar. The cover sidebar. I'd seen the digital proof, but knowing it was actually sitting on newsstands across the country made it feel real in a way nothing had before. The photo showed me in my element, camera in hand, with one of my Montana images in the background. The headline read, "Fresh Eyes, How Small-Town Talent is Reshaping Fashion Photography." And Dad? He's been showing everyone at school. I think he's prouder than you are. Mom's voice caught slightly. We always knew you were special, Sadie, but seeing it recognized like this, it's overwhelming. That afternoon's shoot with Carmen Rodriguez turned into something magical. Her designs were inspired by her grandmother's traditional Mexican dresses, but executed with a contemporary edge that spoke to young Latinas navigating identity in the American South. We photographed her pieces in locations around Nashville that reflected this cultural blend: the historic Ryman Auditorium, the colorful murals of the Gulch District, and a traditional Mexican restaurant where Carmen's family had held their first fashion show. You photograph clothes like you understand their souls, Carmen told me as we wrapped up at Golden Hour. Most fashion photographers make garments look expensive. You make them look meaningful. Her words stayed with me as I flew back to Chicago the next morning. Through the airplane window, watching the patchwork of farmland give way to urban sprawl, I reflected on how much had changed since that humiliating night at Tyler's engagement party. 6 months ago, Madison's Instagram post had made me feel invisible, worthless. Now I was being courted by agencies and requested by Vogue. The meeting with Anna Wintour's team took place in Vogue's Chicago bureau office, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows over Lake Michigan. The creative director, James Morrison, was intimidatingly chic in an understated way that screams expensive simplicity. "Your work with Allure has caught significant attention," he began without preamble. "Anna believes you have a perspective that could be valuable for a project we're developing." He pulled out a tablet showing concept boards for something called American Dreamers, a special issue of Vogue focusing on emerging talent across various industries who are redefining success outside traditional power centers. James swiped through the mood boards, each more sophisticated than the last. We need a photographer who can capture both their achievements and their authenticity, someone who understands that real success often looks different than what we expect. The assignment was unlike anything I'd ever been offered. A month of travel across the United States, photographing everyone from a tech entrepreneur in rural Alabama to an indigenous artist in New Mexico who was revolutionizing contemporary jewelry design. The fee was staggering, more money than my parents made in a year.
"There's one catch," James continued. "We need someone who can handle the pressure. This will be high-profile, highly scrutinized work. The subjects are all remarkable people with fascinating stories, but some of them have never worked with fashion photographers before. You'll need to earn their trust quickly and deliver images that do justice to their achievements." I thought about Carmen Rodriguez trusting me with her family's story, about the Montana ranchers who'd opened their lives to me, about all the people who'd believed in my vision enough to let me document their worlds. "I can handle it," I said, and meant it. The contract signing happened the following week, just as I was flying back to Iowa for my high school graduation. The surreal juxtaposition of signing with Vogue in the morning and attending graduation rehearsal in the afternoon perfectly captured how quickly my life was changing. Cedar Falls High School's graduation ceremony took place on the football field, the same field where Madison had once made fun of my thrift store homecoming dress during our sophomore year. As valedictorian, I delivered a speech about finding opportunity in unexpected places and the importance of staying true to your vision even when others don't understand it. But the moment that mattered most came after the ceremony, when Caleb found me in the crowd of families and graduates. "So, Vogue photographer," he said, with a grin that hadn't changed since our first conversation in the darkroom. "Ready to take on the world?" "Ready as I'll ever be." I looked around at the sea of cap and gowns, at parents taking photos, and teachers saying goodbye to students they'd known for 4 years. It's strange, you know? 6 months ago, I thought my biggest accomplishment would be getting into a decent college. And now? Now I'm not sure what the limits are anymore. Caleb's expression grew serious. "Promise me something, Sadie. Don't let success change who you are. You've always been the girl who saw beauty in things other people overlooked. Don't lose that." His words echoed my mother's advice, and I realized that maintaining my authentic perspective was going to be the real challenge ahead. Success could be just as dangerous as failure if it made you forget what made your work meaningful in the first place. The graduation party at my house was small, just family and close friends celebrating in the bakery after hours. Dad had hung enlargements of my published Allure images on the walls, and the local newspaper had sent a reporter to interview the hometown girl making it big in fashion. I was talking to the reporter when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw your Vogue announcement online. Guess thrift store chic really paid off for you. Congrats, Madison." The emoji felt like a passive-aggressive punctuation mark, but I found myself genuinely laughing. Madison's attempt at a backhanded compliment felt powerless now, almost quaint. The girl who'd once been devastated by her Instagram post was gone, replaced by someone who'd earned respect through talent and hard work. I screenshot the message and showed it to Caleb, who was helping himself to one of Mom's chocolate croissants. "Still thinking about Madison?" he asked. Not thinking about her exactly, but I realized something. When she posted that photo, I thought my life was ruined. I thought everyone would always see me as the poor cousin who shopped at thrift stores. But that moment of humiliation, it's what drove me to prove I was more than that. So, in a weird way, you should thank her. I considered this as I watched my parents laughing with neighbors and teachers, their faces glowing with pride. Maybe, but I think I was always going to find my way here. Madison just made the journey more urgent. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom one last time before leaving for the Vogue assignment. Tomorrow, I'd fly to Los Angeles to begin photographing the 12 American dreamers, starting with a sustainable fashion designer who'd built $1 million business from her garage in Pasadena. My suitcase was packed with professional equipment I'd only dreamed of owning a year ago. My portfolio contained work that had been published in magazines I'd studied religiously as a teenager. My phone held contact information for some of the most influential people in fashion and media. But the most important thing I carried was the same eye for beauty that had driven me to photograph that grain elevator on the edge of Cedar Falls. The ability to see potential where others saw ordinary, to find stories worth telling in places others might overlook. Madison's Instagram post was still there, buried in my notifications from months ago. But when I looked at it now, it felt like a relic from someone else's life. The girl in that photo, standing uncomfortably next to her smug cousin, had been the beginning of my story, not the end of it. The Vogue American Dreamers issue hit newsstands in November, 8 months after Madison's Instagram post had shattered my confidence at Tyler's engagement party. The timing was perfect. Thanksgiving was approaching, which meant the annual Patterson family gathering where it all began.
My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the magazine launched. The cover featured Maria Santos, the sustainable fashion designer from Pasadena, wearing one of her creations against a backdrop I'd shot in the Angeles National Forest. Inside were 11 more stories of extraordinary people building the future from unexpected places, each captured through my lens with a style that critics were calling authentically American and revolutionarily intimate. The New York Times had run a feature about me titled "The Photographer Who Sees America Differently." Vogue's Instagram post announcing the issue had received over 2 million likes. Fashion weeks in Paris and Milan were calling with offers. But the moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for was happening right now as I pulled into my grandmother's driveway for Thanksgiving dinner. The farmhouse looked exactly the same. White clapboard siding, wraparound porch, the tire swing hanging from the old oak tree. But I felt completely different as I walked up those familiar steps, carrying a bottle of wine that cost more than my family used to spend on groceries in a week. Uncle Trevor opened the door before I could knock, his face breaking into a genuine smile that caught me off guard. "Sadie, the famous photographer! Come in, come in. Everyone's been talking about your magazine." The living room fell silent when I entered. Madison was standing by the fireplace in what I recognized as a new Reformation dress, expensive but trying too hard trendy. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, but something in her eyes looked brittle when she saw me. "Well, if it isn't our celebrity cousin," she said, her voice carrying that same musical quality I remembered, but with an edge that hadn't been there before. "I saw the Vogue issue. Very impressive." Grandmother Patterson shuffled over, her arms open for a hug that smelled like lavender and old books. "I'm so proud of you, honey. Mrs. Henderson at the flower shop has been showing your magazine to everyone who comes in. She says you're the most famous person to come out of Cedar Falls since 1952. "What happened in 1952? I asked, genuinely curious. "Nothing," Grandmother laughed. "That's the point." The conversation flowed around me as more family members arrived. Cousin Tyler clapped me on the back and asked about celebrity encounters. Aunt Stephanie made pointed comments about how wonderful it must be to travel so much for work. Uncle Mark wanted to know if I'd photographed any supermodels yet. But Madison remained quiet, nursing a glass of wine and watching me with calculating eyes. I recognized the look. She was trying to figure out how to regain control of a narrative that had completely slipped away from her. Dinner was traditional Patterson chaos: too much food, overlapping conversations, and the gentle, competitive undertone that had always characterized these gatherings. I sat between my parents, who kept beaming at me with pride that made my chest tight with emotion. "So, Sadie," Aunt Stephanie said during a lull in conversation, "Madison tells us you've become quite the social media influencer as well. How many followers do you have now?" The question was clearly loaded, designed to reduce my professional achievements to social media metrics. Madison's smile sharpened as she waited for my response. "I don't really focus on follower counts," I said evenly. "Of course," Madison interjected smoothly, "but it's so important for artists to build their personal brand these days. I've been helping some of my sorority sisters with their Instagram strategies. The algorithm can be so tricky." She was trying to position herself as the expert, the one with knowledge I supposedly lacked. The old Sadie might have felt defensive, might have tried to prove herself with numbers and statistics. But sitting there in my grandmother's dining room, surrounded by family, I realized something profound. I didn't need to prove anything to Madison anymore. "You're absolutely right," I said, and meant it. Social media is definitely important for building connections in any industry. Madison blinked, clearly expecting pushback. When it didn't come, she regrouped quickly. "I actually have some exciting news of my own," she announced, drawing all attention back to herself. "I've been accepted to study abroad in Paris next semester. I'll be interning with a fashion public relations firm there." The table erupted in congratulations. Madison basked in the attention, describing her prestigious internship and her plans to network with European fashion houses. It was clearly planned as a way to reclaim status in the family hierarchy, to remind everyone that she was still the Patterson cousin with the most glamorous prospects. "That's wonderful, Madison," I said when the initial excitement died down. "Paris is an incredible city for fashion. You'll love working there." Again, she seemed thrown by my genuine response. "Maybe we'll run into each other. I'm sure you must work in Paris sometimes now." "Actually, I just got back from a shoot there last month for the spring Chanel campaign." The words hung in the air like a dropped bomb.
The Chanel campaign was something I hadn't planned to announce, but Madison's attempt to one-up me had triggered an honest response. Chanel? Tyler's fiancée Emma leaned forward, eyes wide, like the actual Chanel? Karl Lagerfeld's replacement specifically requested Sadie for their new campaign, celebrating emerging artists, my mother said proudly, unable to contain herself. She photographed musicians and writers and painters wearing Chanel pieces in their own creative spaces. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison's face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, calculation, and something that might have been genuine adoration fighting with deep resentment. "Wow," she finally managed. That's really incredible, Sadie." For the first time in our lives, Madison looked at me without condescension or competitive calculation. She looked at me like an equal, maybe even like someone she respected. The moment should have felt triumphant, but instead, I felt a strange sadness. After dinner, Madison found me on the back porch where I was getting some air and looking at the stars over the Iowa farmland. "Can I talk to you?" she asked, her voice smaller than usual. "Of course." She sat down on the porch swing next to me, the same swing where we'd played as children before competition and insecurity had poisoned our relationship. "I owe you an apology," she said finally, "for the Instagram post, for all the comments over the years. I was threatened by you." I turned to look at her, surprised by the admission. "You always had this thing," she continued, "this ability to see beauty in everything. Even when we were kids, you'd take pictures of old barns and make them look like art. I had all the advantages, the money, the connections, the opportunities, but I couldn't do what you do." "Madison." "No, let me finish. When I posted that photo from Tyler's party, I thought I was being funny, clever, but I was really just trying to diminish you because your talent made me feel inadequate." She wiped away a tear I hadn't expected. "I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry." The apology was everything I'd imagined wanting from her, but receiving it felt different than I'd expected. Instead of vindication, I felt compassion for the girl who'd been so insecure that she'd needed to tear others down to feel worthy. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It means a lot. Could we maybe be friends? Real friends? Not just cousins who tolerate each other at family gatherings." I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment, the humiliation that had driven me to prove myself, the work that had transformed me from victim to victor, the success that had given me the confidence to forgive. "I'd like that," I said, and realized I meant it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the Iowa sky stretch endlessly above us. My phone buzzed with a text from Caleb, who was now studying photography at NYU. "Saw the Times article about the Chanel campaign. I still can't believe my darkroom buddy is conquering the fashion world. Proud of you." Another text followed from Amanda Foster. "Just got word that Vogue wants to make your contributor role permanent. Call me tomorrow." A third from an unknown international number. "Sadie, this is Elena Rodriguez from Vogue Paris. We have a proposal for you that we think you'll find very interesting." I smiled and put the phone away without responding to any of them. There will be time for business tomorrow. Tonight was for family, for forgiveness, and for appreciating how far I'd traveled from that girl in the secondhand dress who thought her world was ending. "You know what's funny?" I said to Madison as we swung gently in the cool November air. "What?" "If you hadn't posted that photo, I might never have been angry enough to prove myself. In a weird way, that humiliation was the best thing that ever happened to me." Madison laughed, a real laugh without any of her usual calculation. "Leave it to you to find the silver lining in my worst moment." As we walked back inside to rejoin our family, I caught my reflection in the farmhouse window. The girl looking back at me was confident, successful, and genuinely happy. She was wearing a custom Valentino blazer that had been gifted to her after a shoot, carrying herself with the poise of someone who'd earned her place in the world. But more importantly, she was still the girl who could see beauty in unexpected places, who could find stories worth telling in the spaces between what others noticed. Success hadn't changed that fundamental part of who I was.
It had just given me a bigger platform to share that vision with the world. The hook from my story had come full circle. Madison thought she'd been so clever with her condescending Instagram post, never knowing that 3 months later, I'd be wearing a custom Valentino on magazine covers. But the real transformation wasn't about designer clothes or magazine features. It was about discovering that the power to define your own worth had been inside you all along, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply becoming so authentically, unapologetically yourself that the opinions of people who once diminished you become irrelevant. Sometimes it's success that's so genuine and grounded that it leaves room for forgiveness, growth, and the possibility that even your harshest critics might become your most unexpected allies. As I hugged my family goodbye that night, promising to visit for Christmas and maybe bring some of my famous photographer friends to meet everyone, I realized that coming home had completed something I didn't even know was unfinished. I'd left Cedar Falls as a girl trying to escape her circumstances. I was returning as a woman who'd learned to transform them. The best stories, I discovered, weren't about leaving your past behind. They were about carrying it with you as you built something better, using every experience, even the painful ones, as material for the life you were creating. Madison's Instagram post was still out there somewhere in the digital universe, a timestamp of a moment when one cousin thought she was superior to another. But it had become something entirely different than what she intended. Not a monument to my humiliation, but a marker of where my real story had begun. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.